Hi there, it's Tara, she of all things transformational guidance coaching, transformational bodywork, and for our purposes here today, transformational yoga. And what we're going to work on transforming today is our body temperature. Where I live in Western New York, we're having a really hot week. It is going to be the first week of summer. And our temperatures are into the 90 degrees, and we're not used to that up here in Western New York. So when it gets hot like this, we all kind of get in a tizzy, and we don't all have central air because we live in old houses that weren't built that way. And let's face it, we have winter for 6 to 9 months of the year, it seems like. So um, when it's hot, we start complaining. So I am really, really grateful that I know some tricks for staying cool through yoga. Yoga's got the answers. So today we're going to just do a couple poses that will help you cool off. They are a little bit prop intensive. So if you don't have a folding chair, which is one of the things we're going to use, you could use the side of like the edge of a couch or something like that. You could use a different kind of chair too. The folding chair tends to be a good height for most people. I wouldn't go much higher than a folding chair height. And then we're going to need some firm blankets. On the folding chair, the blanket you use doesn't have to necessarily be too firm. It could be, just any throw blanket that you have around. But the blankets that are in front of the chair here, they should be good, firm ones. So, you know what I always say, if you have beach towels, like big old beach towels that are nice and thick, you could use those, folding them. That would be adequate. Or other kinds of thick, not cushy, thick blankets would also work for this. Or you could even use a couch cushion or two. The stack that I have here is that's probably about 6 inches high. It may not necessarily need to be that high for you. I'm on the tall side. I have a pretty long neck, and these are going to be in our second pose. These are going to be for our neck. So you might get away with a shorter stack depending on your body. And what I'll say about these poses is that, like all yoga poses, you kind of got to play with them to see what's right for you. So when we use props, it is a little bit more high maintenance. It's true. But if you really get into the yogic spirit and you kind of start to self-examine your body in the experiences that you're having, you will develop the ability to discern if what you're doing feels appropriate to your musculoskeletal system. There should be some level of comforting, being held and supported, but also a little bit of interruption of your normal postural habits or something like that. And so this is where props come in. They help us to access the intention of the pose in the way that we're intending it to do it on a certain day. And they also help us to sort of create a new dynamic or an evolved dynamic in our body and mind and spirit. And so that's where the interruption comes in a little bit of interruption from what you're accustomed to. So you may have to play around with these poses. This may not come on your first try, but it's worth playing around with. And I mean, after all, this is your primary playground. Your body and your mind, this is where you get to explore infinitely. And so explore with me today these two poses that we're going to do to help us cool off in hot weather. Or just if you're generally aggravated, if you have a little bit of anger going on, these poses might help too. And by the way, disclaimer, nothing works all the time for everybody. So while these may be generally a good idea for many people to help cool their body temperature and maybe cool their mind a little bit. It might not be the case for you. And that is always true for yoga. There are things that are generally true for most or for many, but sometimes won't work. So, again, this is where discernment comes in. And discernment is a quality that we gain through an intelligent yoga and meditation practice. So, play around and let's see what happens. The first pose that we're going to do is a seated forward fold. And you're going to need to have a high enough stack of blankets that when you sit on the blankets and kind of roll to the front edge of your sit bones, you can kind of pull your glute flesh out of the way a little bit. You're going to press out through your heels and reach out through the balls of your big toes so that the outside edges of your legs are drawing towards the floor rather than letting the feet roll in. Please don't let the feet roll in. And this is going to become the rooting, grounding quality of the pose. As you can see, I'm quite high up off the ground, and I've got a nice lumbar curve here. And then what I'm going to do to take my fold is I'm just going to invite myself to rotate the hips over the thigh bones. So essentially, I'm going to feel my tailbone move back, and I'm going to start to fold over this chair. And I'm not really aiming for a huge stretch in the leg. You might feel some stretch, especially if you're on the tight side. But more so, what we're going to do here is we're going to support the head on either your hands or, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you could have grabbed a block. But any kind of object with some height would do. You're just going to support your forehead there. And you can hear that's my heels rubbing on the floor because I'm continuing to encourage my heels to move out, putting lots of energy through the balls of both feet and on the outside line of my legs, the lateral line of the legs. And I have my forehead supported. Why is this cooling? This is cooling because when we support the forehead, it sends a message to our nervous system that we are safe, that we can relax, that there is no tiger chasing us. And it creates an environment in which our parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and relax nervous system, can come online. And so when that happens, it tends to cool the body off. And we're going to breathe here with some good inhale, feeling expansion through the rib cage, through the lower ribs, between the shoulder blades, through your chest bone. And then you're going to exhale. And even though you're keeping a little bit of energy in the legs alive, you're going to allow yourself to surrender your weight into whatever you're resting your forehead on, through your sit bones, your pelvis, into the floor, into the earth. And I hope that your back is not too overly rounded here as you do this pose, but rather that you have a bit of length still through the spine and a bit of length through your front body. So the belly isn't really crushing too much. The rib cage isn't crushing onto the hips too much in the front of your body, but there's a little bit of length there. You might feel like you need to kind of either move the head down or move the chair forward or move your seat back. I have my chair against the wall, so I'm just going to move my seat back an inch. And this pose, as long as you feel comfortable in it, you can stay in this pose for a good amount of time, 3, 4, 5 minutes. Breathing deeply on the inhale, exhale, releasing your weight through the sit bones, through your hips, Again, as the pose evolves, you may find that the head can come lower or move a little more space between your body and the chair. Yoga means union, so in this pose, we're finding the union of just a little bit of intention through the alignment of the legs, the low-level action in the legs, the angle of the hips, and then the surrender and release through the weight of the body, induced by your slow breath cycles, long exhales. You can release any tension in the body that you don't require, like in the jaw, the back of the neck, the belly, the hands, the eyes, while keeping just a little bit of that integrity through the legs, a little bit of length through the spine. So you may stay here as long as you want. For the sake of the video, I'm going to come out and move on. You're going to push up here using your hands. And you can gather your legs in and just hold the legs together a little bit for a moment. And then we're going to move on to the next pose. And the next pose is just a little bit exciting. So we're going to do a variation of shoulder stand using the chair to support our tailbone. So you're going to keep the blankets that you have here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn them so the folded edge is the edge away from the chair seat. See what I mean? These edges are folded here instead of the open edge. And I have all three of my blankets stacked, folded edges away from the chair seat, and they're just a little bit stepped. So they're not completely straight up and down like a wall, but just slightly angled, because this is where my neck is going to go. And guess what? My neck is not straight up and down. It's got a curve. So I kind of want to meet the curve of my neck with the blankets. And then because I've done this pose a lot of times, I'm pretty sure that this is probably about the distance I'm going to need the blankets from the chair seat. So to come into the pose, what you're going to do is you're going to come to the chair edge. And again, you have to use some caution and use some intelligence here if this is appropriate for you. By the way, maybe not appropriate if you have high blood pressure, especially if it's not under control, or glaucoma. But this pose, shoulder stand, is amazing for a lot of different pathologies, not just staying cool. So this is a really good one to tuck away into your toolbox and have different variations of it to be able to do, because it's such a powerful pose. So I'm sitting on the edge here, and I'm just going to bring my hand down to my blanket stack. And you see how I'm kind of spinning up, and I'm using my hands on the chair to help me come up, and I've got the wall there to rest my heels against. And then look, I just slid back a little bit. The blanket on the chair helped me to slide. And I've got this stack of blankets underneath my neck so that I'm supporting the neck curve and I'm not overstretching the back of the neck. That's why I don't do this flat with the back of the head flat. And then, okay, so your arms, you could tuck the shoulder blades towards each other and just have the arms open to a V. Or if you have the ability, you could bring the arms inside the legs of the chair and hold on to one of the rungs on the back of the chair. On my chair, there's a lower and a higher rung. I could hold on to either one, or I could hold on to the chair legs, kind of whatever suits your body. But really, the more you tuck your shoulder blades together, the more you're going to open up the front of the body here. And then because I've got my tailbone resting on the chair seat, and my lumbar vertebrae are sort of draping down from the chair seat. I'm getting a little bit of traction in the lumbar, which is quite lovely. And I'm creating this openness from the front of my hips up to the front of my collarbones, the pubis to the manubrium, and then across the shoulders. So I see this as a big dome in my imagination. And the more I draw my shoulder blades together, the more I accentuate the dome-like effect, because the shoulder blades are becoming a fulcrum that are lifting my chest bone. And then the tailbone is a fulcrum that's lifting the anterior abdomen, the front of your hips, the front of your belly, and opening up the front of your rib cage, those lower ribs, which are floating ribs. So they have a lot of movability compared to the other ribs, but we've got to offer it, because if we don't offer the movement to those lower ribs, they might get kind of stuck and glued together. And this is where lots of pathologies actually could be exacerbated in the body. So here you can start to do some really, really deep breath and feel the rib cage expand wide and also out. So sternum moving up and out, ribs moving wide, and then a slow exhale. I'm just keeping my heels leaning against the wall, but I can also take my heels away and have the legs floating up, and this is just as lovely and just as doable. You can bring some vigor into the legs, bringing the center of the feet together. Sometimes I play with sort of waving the legs a little bit forward and back. But we're doing this on the restorative side today because we want it to have that really cooling effect that we're going for. So letting the feet rest on the wall will help that sometimes. I put a bolster between my legs and the chair back, but the wall is working really nicely as well. And you're just breathing here. Deep breath in, slow breath out. So I'm going to encourage you to stay here as long as you want. This is a pose that if you feel safe in it, your body feels okay and content, you can definitely stay in this pose for several minutes. 2, 3, no problem. 4, 5, absolutely. You could stay in this pose for up to 10, or sometimes I even stay longer. But when you're ready to come out, it does get a little tricky. So here's what you're going to do, and I hope you watched this first. You're going to release your hands from whatever they might have been holding on, and you're just going to allow, so I release my hands from inside the chair, but now I'm going to grab the outside of the leg. So I'm just holding something, and I'm going to allow myself to slide my hips off of the chair seat, and I'm just shimmying my shoulders off of the stack of blankets until I slide my hips onto that stack of blankets. And then I can just move my bring my calves to the chair, move my blankets back a little bit. So now the blankets are underneath my tailbone instead of the chair back. And my upper back is on the floor. My head is on the floor. You could stick a teeny little blanket under your head if you need to. I wouldn't raise it too high here. You can have the arms open to a T or in a goalpost or in a Y shape. Or if you prefer, you could have the hands on the belly so you could feel the rhythm of your breath and feel the rib cage moving as you inhale and exhale slowly. And I'll tell you that slowing down the breath, especially a nice long exhale, will calm your energy and eventually will cool your body, because you're cooling the nervous system. You're coming out of whatever low level fight or flight that it's possible that you might have been holding on to. We don't even know it anymore in our culture. It's just sort of ingrained to have this low level fight or flight. We're enticing ourselves out with the slow exhalations. Letting yourself relax. And I'm going to encourage you to stay here as long as possible. And I'm going to thank you so much for practicing with me today. And I hope you come back to this practice many times. You can get all the information about how to get in touch with me in the show notes. And I'm going to ask you to kindly do all the things that we do when we appreciate a video. You could, at minimal, give it a like. That's such a generous thing to do. You could subscribe to my channel. You could comment on this video. You could share it with someone who you think it might help. And I appreciate your presence. And if you need to reach out to me for any reason, find my information in the show notes and we can continue our journey together. See you next time. Thank you so much. Namaste. In, exhale, out. Inhale, exhale.